Greetings. I'm Dr. Zena Crenshaw Logel, co-founder and executive director of National Judicial Conduct and Disability Law Project, Inc., which is a nonprofit good government advocate based in Atlanta, Georgia. We focus on the U.S. legal system and have several related initiatives under the NJC DLP corporate umbrella. They include Opt-in USA and the online publication titled Priorities. One of our closest allies is Louisiana United International, which is a member-based civil, constitutional, and human rights organizations. I serve as LUI's Assistant Chief of Operations, so LUI and NJC DLP definitely have a close working relationship. Belinda Parker Brown is LUI's co-founder and CEO. This week, she hosted an online press conference to announce legal action she is taking to secure the release from St. Charles Parish Jail in Kelowna, Louisiana, of LUI member Reverend Errol Victor Sr. Priorities and Opt-in USA are featuring Reverend Victor's difficulties because he is a poster child of how America's criminal justice system can ensnare anyone in an amazingly blatant yet seemingly secret web of highly questionable circumstances and legal proceedings. Getting ensnared in a web is a rather disturbing way to describe the intricate avenues of redress that comprise America's legal system. However, it seems for most people, the quality or nature of that experience largely relates to whether it's a fair and impartial administration of justice. Opt-in USA emphasizes how literally life-threatening the experience can be the longer it contradicts what any well-informed, reasonable person would consider fair and impartial. What Opt-in USA proposes is that international diplomacy should be among the options any and all Americans can pursue through the UN Human Rights Committee when America's political and legal systems are clearly failing to protect our supposedly inalienable rights. And that is exactly what LUI contends that our political and legal systems are doing with regard to Reverend Errol Victor Sr., failing to protect his inalienable rights for more than a decade, even to the point now of needlessly risking his death by COVID-19 exposure. Here are Parker Brown's opening remarks at her recent press conference.
Good afternoon, everyone. First of all, I would like to welcome you all for coming to this very, very important press conference. All of our participants and all of our speakers here today, thank you so very, very much. I know that times are stressful right now. It's a lot going on, and I realize that we all are busy, but this is very, very important. So thank you from the bottom of my heart for coming to this press conference today. I want to just start out by saying that, Louisiana United International is a civil, constitutional, human rights organization that we're focusing on, injustice, corruption, any wrongdoing when it comes to people, civil rights and constitutional rights being violated, wrongful discrimination, just a mirage of things that's taking place. But right now, we're here today to hold this press conference, and we want to make it clear to you that, we have got all the evidence in this case that there is no reason why whatsoever that Reverend Victor is being held in jail right now. And what we're saying is that there is no authority. The courts have no authority to hold him. And just think for a moment, if this was you or your loved one. We have sought the court. I have filed on December 17th, I filed a habeas requesting a 72-hour hearing for the warden to prove why they're holding Pastor Victor or otherwise release him. And this is why we're here today. I want it to be also clear that we're not here to retry his case in the public at this press conference. We're here to say that according to the law, according to the documents, according to the record, the face, on the face of the record, that they have no right whatsoever to hold Pastor Victor in prison. So with that said, we want the whole world to know that when it comes to a person being held in prison with no charges, the United States Supreme Court, the highest court, have vacated the conviction. Then why are you holding this person? Especially when we have this deadly coronavirus that Pastor Victor is complaining that he has been very, very sick. He have said that all of the symptoms, headaches, he can't keep any food down, he's throwing up, he's having chills, he can't keep his body warm, feverish, and he's sick. So the 72-hour habeas have not yet gotten a response from the courts saying when they're going to hold the hearing. So right now we have to say to the world, all of our, human rights activists, everybody that's out there, we want them to join us, and asking, how can you do this to a person? How can you hold, a person, in prison with no charges, with no conviction? How can you do this? And so what we're saying is that what they're doing is wrong. And we want the courts to answer, and we want the courts to prove and show us the evidence how and why they can hold this man when there is proof that they don't have any charges.
LUI won't retry Reverend Victor's case in the media, but we will work steadily over the coming weeks to build public awareness of what has happened to him through what LUI contends is organized legal system abuse. Ms. Parker Brown's petition for writ of habeas corpus sets forth the grounds on which she has requested Reverend Victor's release. Some of her press conference presenters speak directly to Reverend Victor's circumstances, and they elaborate on those difficulties. Take a look.
As they say, around the world, no justice, no peace. And unfortunately, right now, we can have no peace because Pastor Errol Victor is being unjustly held. It's been a shame from the beginning. This has been a very, very sad case. We're talking about a man who has great character. And his only problem was he was a successful businessman. He was getting ready to open up a supermarket and a host of other businesses. And the white community in St. John Parish felt threatened that he was competing with them. He had a perfect credit score, 850, never been late paying any of his bills. They had a problem with him because he wasn't a person who dismissed kids, but a person who educated his kids. And he wanted his kids to be successful. So all of his kids drove nice cars. All of his kids did great things. He passed on great trades to them. And they really, really was angry with him. And his kid got sick, and his kid died. And as a result, they had a way in. And they said, we're going to put it on him as if he murdered his kid. And that was an absolute lie. He did not hurt his kid. The kid died of natural results. But here's what they did. The day that he was arrested, they arrested him. They seized all of his assets, his house, his cars, all of his businesses. How could you seize someone's property without due process? He never was late paying his bills. He was current. He had a perfect credit score. Not only that, before he was convicted, he had not even been to trial yet, they took his kids and gave all of his kids up for adoption. Come on now. We're talking about America. This doesn't even happen in the Soviet Union. All of his kids was given up for adoption. Not only that, but he was placed in penitentiary, Angola, Louisiana, one of the worst penitentiaries in the world, without having any conviction. When he arrived to the penitentiary, they say, what is he here for? He has not been found and not been convicted. He hadn't even went to trial yet. And they said, we don't know what to do with him. This place is designed for people who have 75 years, who has been sentenced for 75 years to life. Their courts and the judicial system has been unfair to Pastor Errol Victor since the beginning. And now the United States Supreme Court ruled that has vacated his sentence. The Fifth Circuit of Appeal in the state of Louisiana has vacated his sentence. The lower courts have no charges against him. There's been the Louisiana Attorney General or the district attorney has not brought any charges against him, but he's being held in prison. They refuse to give him a bond, but he don't need a bond because he has no sentence. They don't even want to let him out. The LUI has filed an emergency appeal, a writ of habeas corpus to present his body before the courts to see why they hold him. The courts have not even ruled with this. This is a shame. This is the kind of stuff that happens in the Philippines or happens in China, not in America. In Louisiana, we have one of the most corrupt judicial systems in the world, and we have to challenge this system. We have to do what's necessary to bring about everybody in the world has to be notified that Reverend Errol Victor is innocent. He must be freed. The coronavirus they put him in a place where the virus is rapid. And why do you do that? Because you want this man to die. Because on day one, you took his house, you took his business, y'all raided his bank account. How are you going to take over $500,000 cash out the man's bank account? Where is his money? Why did you take his money? On day one, there was no conviction. There's no judgment. He owed nobody. Give him his freedom. Give him his house back. Give him his business back. And give him his money. And give him his kids back. I relinquish the rest of my time.
Thank you, Brother Darren. Okay, we're going to just go down our list, our lineup. The next person on the list is Mr. Robert Taylor. Mr. Robert Taylor is the former NAACP president during this time, the beginning of there in St. John the Baptist Parish. Mr. Taylor, unmute yourself and come on in.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
I'm listening to Pastor, to the brother minister Boykins, and the story is so sad, and the facts are so clear of the lynching of the vigilante approach that the state of Louisiana, the parish of St. John the Baptist, has taken with this man and his family. It is unconscionable that in this day and age, this is allowed to happen. I don't see how any Black person who is made aware of what took place with Mr. Errol Victor and his family can sleep at night. I live a couple of blocks from Mr. Victor. I grew up in this community with his parents and his siblings and the people here. If they could do this to a man like Errol Victor, the rest of us stand a poor chance in this system. This is a man at 42 years old, got a family of 15, raising 13 boys, charter school, home training, educated his children himself. Those boys built that $850,000 home that they were living in. His sons built that. They were not in the streets with their pants sagging. They were at home studying in the charter school with their father and mother, training for all of these trades. And a good example of that is that they tore this family apart, scattered the children everywhere. But these boys right today, every last one of them is successful. They got great jobs, great businesses, from electrical contracting, as a result of the upbringing that Mr. Victor provided them with. That speaks to it. So the fact that this man had to go all the way to the Supreme Court of the United States to find justice, and still these people here in Louisiana disregard that. LUI had to, and their attorneys had to threaten the state of the Angola prison system to get them to release this man. The United States Supreme Court exonerated this man. They vacated all these false charges. They railroaded this man with these vigilante trials. None of the trials that they held here in the 40th Judicial District Court were lawful. Mr. Victor defeated them. They could not get a unanimous jury, which is required for a conviction of a felony. We know that the state of Louisiana, in its Ku Klux Klan approach to Black people 100 years ago, stated in the legislature that this 10-2 was so that they could incarcerate Black men. For 100 years, they've done that. Finally, the people of Louisiana found out about it and threw it out. And still, they will not release those men. They will not redress this problem at all. Here we have a man who is proven innocent, and they got him locked up. And I don't find any support coming from the community. What's embarrassing to me is that I am a member of the community here in Reserve and in St. John Parish and in the state of Louisiana, and that there's not an outcry for the injustice that was done to the Victor family. These people, long before they had that hanging jury, destroyed this man's family. They took the two babies, 1-year-old and 3-year-old, and sent them to New York State. That woman has not seen or heard from her babies. They're teenage boys now. This was what, 12 years ago? The rest of the children were scattered over, and the parish of St. John took demolition equipment and went and tore down these people's homes. This man had a home he provided for his children, and the parish of St. John destroyed it. They went and scraped the house off the lot. The house was valued by the bank at $825,000. I mean, it is outrageous, the things that happen there. And please stop me, because I will rant on and on about this.
Mr. Taylor, you're doing an excellent job, and we're going to stop you right there, because you're absolutely right. Louisiana have been known, even though there was a lawsuit lodged against them from a complaint that LUI have made on several occasions about them holding people over their time. And I know that, they're notorious for this type of treatment. But what we're saying is that Louisiana have gotten it wrong with Reverend Errol Victor. They got it wrong, and they're going to have to get it all the way right. We want him immediately released. So on that note, we're going to go to our next lineup. And Mr. Taylor, you just stay right there. We may come back to you if there's any questions. We're going to have a time for Q&A. I would like for you, if you're not speaking, you can either mute your camera, take your camera off the air and just wait and listen. If you're not speaking, take your camera off the air. There's a lot of movement. And we're going to go right to our next speaker, which would be Minister Ashe. Minister Ashe, when you come on, just state your name and your title, and also your state that you're in.
Thank you, Mrs. Chairman Belinda Parker Brown. This is Minister Kujenga Elia Ashe. I'm in Columbus, Ohio. I'm the founder of the Economic Rights Movement, and I am an ambassador to the United Nations in New York City for several NGOs, non-governmental organizations. I want to first thank Louisiana United International for giving me the opportunity to speak on this very crucial matter about my brother and pastor, Reverend Errol Victor. I've been in this situation before myself as a political prisoner, and I know some of what he's going through. I want to thank Dr. Z and Belinda once again for doing such a great job putting this press conference together. Number one, this is a national press conference. This is something that's going all over the country, and we're going to spread it all over the world, because this injustice will not and must not go unchecked. We are going to make sure that we get justice for Pastor Victor and for his wife and for his family. As part of the United Nations, I understand that we have a document called the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. And that Universal Declaration of Human Rights applies to all political prisoners, which Pastor Victor is one. And the state of Louisiana, from the governor on down to the dog catcher, is guilty of violating the Universal Declaration of Human Rights when it comes to Pastor Victor's case. Article 4, no one shall be held in slavery or servitude. Article 5, there shall be no torture or unusual or cruel or unusual punishment. They're in violation of Article number 5. Number 7, there should be equal accommodations under the law and before the law. Number 8, there should be a remedy from a national or international tribunal. And Pastor Victor has a remedy from the Supreme Court. They overturned the 10-2 rigged jury system. They vacated his case, but he's still being held unjustly. This is a violation of the Universal Declaration of Human Rights from the United Nations, number 8. Number 9, no one shall be arbitrarily arrested or detained or put in exile when they have not been convicted of a crime. They are in violation of number 9 under the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. Number 10 calls for a fair trial, which he has had in the Supreme Court, which has vacated his case. number 11 and number 12, they're also in violation of those articles that deal with his rights when it comes to his property and his funds. We have to take this not only on a national level, but also to an international level. We've got to make the complaint to the people who are on the highest levels of government, including the president-elect and the president, vice president-elect. We've got to make a complaint against the governor of the state of Louisiana and everybody on down. So I'm praying that we will have the victory. I feel that we will have the victory, and I'm thankful for Sister Belinda Parker Brown, Dr. Z, and all the rest of you brothers and sisters who have come to the knowledge that we must stand together or we'll die apart. I yield the rest of my time, Chairman Brown.
Thank you so much, Minister Ashe. Very well said. Wow. You know, I just want to say that, you know, this is a state of emergency that we're in, people, especially when you hear the minister talk about the tyranny that have been afflicted upon Reverend Errol Victor, and hear Mr. Taylor say and Mr. Minister Balkin say these things, it would be very difficult for us to believe. But I'm here to tell you that this is what this press conference is about. It's the truth. And we want Reverend Errol Victor free. We want him released, people. This is wrong. Louisiana have gotten it wrong. So with that said, we're gonna go next to our next speaker. Hold on just 1 minute. I wanna make sure that I'm being courteous to everyone. Pastor Pickney, would you come next and state your name and your title and what state you're from? Greetings to you, Pastor Pickney. I'm so happy to have you on here with us.
Well, you know, it's an honor to be here today. I tell you, I'm excited, and I just want to tell you that the work you're doing is just tremendous, and people have to understand how important it is that people stand together. You see,
Take the title and your name and where you're from.
Reverend Edward Pinckney, the president of the Black Autonomy Network Community Organization, and we're in the state of Michigan. And I just think it's just so important that, you know, people understand the power that you have in unity, you know, because I was in Pastor Victor's position and I was sent to prison myself. And you know, for no reason, I had no evidence, no nothing. They just wanted me to be in prison. That's the only thing they wanted. They didn't care about my family. They didn't care about the community. They didn't care about nobody. Only thing they cared about was sending me to prison. If they could send me to prison, they were more than happy, because that's the way it is. But there is a way that we can defeat them. I believe it's no justice, no peace. And I think that that should be our motto all the way down through, because we can't allow them to have an easy ride. You see, as long as they think, see, one of the things that you said, they understand the law. They understand the law well. But the problem is they think we don't understand the law. This is how they get away with stuff like this. They think that they know everything they do. They got support on what they're doing, and they're able to get away with it. Mr. Victor do not deserve to be in prison today. There's not a reason in the world he should be sitting in prison without a bond. But if we don't stand up and fight back and tell him what we can do, that we're here to stay, he's never going to get that thing, because they want to keep him in there. You talking about bulldozing his house down? They bulldoze his house down. Who do that? Who bulldoze someone home just because they're in jail? You talking about $825,000 and the community accept it? They're just as guilty as these people. If you live in a community who let people do stuff like this, they're going to continue. It's Mr. Victor today and you tomorrow. And until the people understand that, it's going to continue just like that. And we must understand to get that man out of prison. That COVID-19 is no joke. This is the real deal. And they can find a way to get you involved in stuff like that. But we have to know that we're doing what we're supposed to do to make things happen and get Mr. Victor out of there. And we can. There's
Thank you.
strength in numbers. There's strength in numbers. We need numbers. We need people. Like when I was in prison, over 22,000 people wrote me a letter. So that's one of the biggest things that you have to do. The Supreme Court ruled in my favor only because they knew that I was able to take it, not because they given it to me. You got to be able to take it. If you can't take it, you're not going to get it into society. I don't care who you are or what you do. It don't mean a thing to these people. It don't mean nothing. If they don't think that you can take it, well, we can't take freedom from Mr. Victor. He will not get freedom. He will not get it. You think that he's going to get a bond if they think we can't take it? It's not going to happen. But I look at this as an opportunity for everybody. And I'm excited today to be here. And we got to continue to spread the word. And we got to expose them for who they are. Until we do that, it's going to continue just like this, just this way. But we can do it. And we got to tell them no justice, no peace, and no more racist police. Let's deal with this. Thank you. I yield my time.
I was among the remaining press conference speakers who included some of the world's most tenacious and accomplished freedom fighters. Our press conference evolved into a rap session or sort of a science lab on the how-tos of gaining Reverend Victor's release. And a central topic was the need for substantial public outcry on Reverend Victor's behalf. Of course, most grassroots activists struggle for community support in America, which is a subject worth studying in and of itself. Celebrity endorsements and positive major media coverage are likely always part of the formula for widespread community outcry for public interest causes in America. What average Americans don't seem to readily consider is number one, extremely serious public interest matters may lack celebrity and major media attention through no fault of the activists involved. Number two, unfortunately, assigning fault when progress seems slow among grassroots activists is more popular than the business of actually overcoming whatever obstacles are apparent. But number three is the real kicker. Not since the 60s has widespread public outcry seemed to precipitate fundamental reforms of America's legal system. So here we are at the dawn of a new decade, needing massive uprisings to convince U.S. government to cease and desist with rather obvious travesties of justice. Now that threshold of persuasion is as much a problem as whatever injustice we organize and mobilize to redress. Having to clear that hurdle makes a dog-eat-dog hunger game out of what should be reasonable marketing, funding, and staffing challenges for public interest advocates. That threshold is incentive for the ruthless and wealthy to resist even compelling reform initiatives, gambling that they won't be sustainable. Americans have long proven that we're not apathetic, but we have equated celebrity with legitimacy to the point that it's almost more important for our information sources to seem famous than be accurate. LUI is an information source with regard to Reverend Victor. LUI and its charismatic leader, Belinda Parker Brown, they are famous. Both have considerable celebrity. They are proven forces for justice that regularly attract celebrity support and positive major media coverage. However, exposing contradictions in America's legal system, such that average citizens, law professionals, public policy experts, and human rights defenders openly condemn those inconsistencies. Now, that's just not an easy task. Anything short of these broad-based endeavors may be more an intrusion on judicial independence in America than a quest for appropriate oversight and accountability. Now, both are about swaying courts, but swaying courts and protecting rights are not necessarily one and the same. Any attempted divide between the two works against the Reverend Victors of America in one way or another. Judicial bullying works against the greater good. We avoid that by addressing individual miscarriages of justice in America as symptoms of overriding U.S. legal system malfunctions, dysfunctions, and corruption. Yet nothing seems to strike Americans as more irrelevant to them than these systemic problems. That's the blah blah. Action is apparently perceived as specific case focused advocacy. If we, as average Americans, are to effectively protect our rights from coordinated violation involving rogue agents of U.S. government, we simply must embrace a more holistic approach to social justice advocacy. Me, we, all of us is a spectrum we each need to perceive in almost every constitutionally sound U.S. legal system reform initiative. Specific names and cases are almost incidental considerations. That's not to suggest organizations like LUI, NJCDOP, and their many allies don't need people clamoring for Reverend Victor and each personal cause we champion. Lack of community support is one of the main reasons our campaign participants go so long without justice. However, picket signs, car caravans, and marches to Capitol steps highlighting individual difficulties that few people relate to their own lives. Are most people trust courts and politicians to fix? Or are they too afraid to challenge these problems for good reason? Well, saying your name under those circumstances may make matters worse than better. That's why LUI and NJCDOP teamed in 2020 to gear themselves and their closest allies for holistic challenges of organized U.S. legal system abuse. We need big picture support. No one can do it all. We all have our priorities, yes. But members and constituents who are not energized until their names and cases top the agenda, they might as well shout to the world that nothing worth supporting is being done. No petition, no phone blitz, no webinar, no Facebook page, no press conference, no campaign launch, nothing for Reverend Victor, nothing for anyone who is not them. Here's what's to come for Reverend Victor. Yes, good afternoon, everyone. Over the next several weeks, LUI's Legal Affairs Committee will be finalizing administrative complaints and investigation requests that allege specific professional conduct rule violations as part of what we anticipate will be compelling evidence of deliberate misconduct with regard to with regard to Reverend Victor. In other words, we're going to go beyond simply describing what happened and saying that it's unethical, that it's illegal, it's criminal. We're going to go beyond that and allege specific rules of ethics were violated. And we're also going to suggest that the criminal violations of his rights that's apparent from the misconduct we're going to identify help prove that in light of all the other circumstantial evidence that in fact there's been crimes committed. There's been deliberate violation of his rights, which are violations of specific criminal law, federal and state criminal law. It's LUI's intent to trigger professional disciplinary proceedings, legislative hearings, and criminal investigations premised on the circumstances of Reverend Victor's prosecution, his conviction, and his ongoing detainment. But what we need everyone to understand, what we need the world to understand, is that as our speakers, previous speakers have indicated or suggested, relevant history going back hundreds of years, we've actually tracked this history for hundreds of years, certain real life experiences over the last 30 or so years, empirical data, and relatively recent social science research give us virtually no reason to believe any of these technical efforts, these filing administrative complaints, requesting investigation. The history give us no real reason to believe that any of those efforts are going to produce a fair and impartial outcome if we don't press the United States of America to fix its broken legal system. In October, a couple of years ago, in October 2008, the UN Human Rights Council determined that the U.S. does not provide its citizens effective avenues of redress for deliberate violations of their rights by agents of U.S. government. Now, you and I, we can have a private dispute and perhaps justice may be done, but if you are alleging that your rights have been deliberately violated under color of law, that some agent of government has conspired with other agents of governments to deliberately railroad you, that's a term that's used, weaponize the legal system against you. The United Nations Human Rights Council has specifically determined that the U.S. is not going to provide you effective avenues of relief. And effective doesn't mean chasing the bunny rabbit for years. This shell game, file here, file there, and people don't even live long enough to ever get relief. Now, this ineffective legal system, again, when you're talking about government misconduct, our abuse of government powers is the more technically correct way to say it. That is a violation of America's International Covenant on Civil and Political Rights. And it leaves every citizen of this country at the mercy of what my colleague Brian Kenter has described as Las Vegas justice. Maybe you'll win, maybe you'll lose, but good luck predicting what your fate is going to be based on looking at the facts or even the well-established law in your case, if you're alleging that there was some type of orchestrated violation of your rights by government. And who gets subjected to that? People who are pursuing economic development, like Reverend Victor, that the larger establishment doesn't like. Government whistleblowers, government critics. We become targeted individuals. And again, the United Nations has determined that in the U.S., there is no effective avenue of redress because it's just basically a shell game and good luck as to whether you prevail. So far, my investigation of Reverend Victor's case suggests it's one of the worst miscarriages of justice I've seen in nearly 40 years as a civil trial lawyer turned human rights defender. But it's merely a symptom of the human rights crisis that's gripping our nation. I'm just about done, but I just can't overemphasize that. It's a symptom. We are in a nation in a human rights crisis. Both the UN Human Rights Council and the separate UN Human Rights Committee are working with LUI and the many other advocates that support Opt-in USA. That's a campaign for judicial oversight in this country, an international human rights campaign. And they have laid out, the United Nations have laid out a process for us as average citizens to directly help fix America's broken legal system. Now, all we need, as Minister Ashe suggested, we need a president a U.S. president that's ready and willing to meet us at the table and start the healing process, start the fixing process. That process is going to entail earnest investigations of organized U.S. legal system abuse, such as we seem to have seen in Reverend Victor's case, and with millions of Americans. Millions of Americans are enduring this nightmare, even though Pastor Victor's case seems to be one of the most egregious examples. But let me tell you what has been done in the dark If we stick together, as Pastor Pickney has suggested, as the speakers have indicated, what has been done in the dark will be brought to light, and there will be a lawful reckoning for those people who are abusing government power and violating people's rights deliberately under color of law, and for the harm that we have suffered at the hands of these evil